Yes, I am thinking
Sometimes you're kind of squeezed way back there. You could be closer up here somewhere. Good morning.
Nathan, we need one more chair.
Do you want more tea?
Yeah.
Should I put a tea here?
That's better. I've got lots of black screens, and the Dalai Lama is apparently attending our class. And we have there's kind of a vague greenness that's attending as well. That's how amazing. Good morning. I think it's holiday time or something like that, and so we're having one of our diminished turnouts this morning, although it's sort of at the last minute. There's a few people coming in. It becomes less diminished. We've got this topic which has been ongoing for quite a few gatherings, Primordial Dharma, and that just pointing out that apart from the meaning of Dharma, which is sort of secondary, the primordial part's what's important. That's a bit of tongue-in-cheek, as if the Dharma is not important, the Dharma is important, right? But primordial Dharma is not talking about yesterday's Dharma. It's not talking about some antiquity Dharma. It's certainly not talking about tomorrow's Dharma. Right? The very nature of Dharma, that which mothers and supports and holds and nurtures us, whilst we in turn are holding, supporting and nurturing and mothering others, kind of a mutual, right, arising of mystery, right, is eternally fresh. It's happening always now. And so, consequently, I'm not surprised that the numbers of people coming on the Sunday is diminishing, because they just say, oh, he always talks about the same old stuff. It's just now, you know. I mean, now is, oh, got it, now. But tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, that's vast. There's lots to talk about there. And yesterday, and yesterday, and yesterday's yesterday, right? Lots to talk about there. And so I just sort of the same old boring thing as we kind of bore into. We bore into something which is kind of tragically ignored in our culture, which is that we exist in the living that is taking place. And we're quite often we think, well, I'll live tomorrow. You know, if I can just do something, I'll get my living on tomorrow. Or probably there's no point, I'm going to die soon and the world's going to die and the whole thing's falling apart. But I used to live. There was the living that was yesterday and the golden age in the past, you know, when you were a teenager or when you were a kid or when you were sort of some golden age in some historical period. Okay? This this living that's taking place right now, right? In this right now are all our problems. And in this right now are all our solutions. It's a strange thing. Let's just sit for a few moments and see if you can settle into a sense of this primordial being at Orgian yet again. Right? In a sense, have you ever left this moment? When you're sitting, notice how your appreciation for this moment kind of almost like pulses. It can have a sense of expanding. And this moment is becoming vaster and vaster without actually getting any bigger. But you can also sometimes have a sense of something happens and everything shrinks. And this moment seems to be some teeny little, like this. So we're kind of settling into this. So maybe we're like jellyfish beings. Just opening into the wider living that we are. We take refuge in love and clear seeing. We live courageously in this world of birthing, dying. Our hearts embrace all companions on this path of lucidity and freedom. For the sake of all beings, wisdom, compassion, non-clinging awareness. Sadhu. I think everyone notices it, but could you please, those of you that are online, just really make sure your mute's happening, and it's a bit disturbing when suddenly it kind of comes flashing through the speaker. I'd like to begin our exploration this morning with a bit more poetry. First of all, another poem by Patty Ann Rogers. I'm having a little Patty Ann Rogers revisit. Because I think it does, in a sense, introduce, and in a way which is kind of almost like non-didactic, it's appealing to your intuition, your kind of poetic sense of what it is we're considering here, what we're actually doing. this is a short poem, but it's not an easy poem. It's a bit convoluted, and I may have to kind of add a little bit towards the end, just to remind you of where it began, even though it's less than a page. Right? And the poem is called Finding the Cat in a Spring Field at Midnight. The cat that lives with us, we call Greycoat. Everyone says, what a weird name for a cat, Greycoat. But when you see Greycoat, it's kind of a logical name. She's totally grey, light grey. And I can imagine finding Greycoat in a spring field at midnight. It takes a particular vision to be able to detect precisely where the field grasses brushed by blowing stars and the odor of spring in the breath of sweet clover buds, and the star-mingled calls of the toads in the threading grasses, and the paws of clover brushing through the field of stars, and the star-shaped crickets in the ears of the sweet grasses, and the tail of the night flicking through the cells of the clover, and the spring stars slinking past the eyes of midnight, and the hour of the field mouse passing through the claws of the stars, and the brushing haunches of the weeds and starry grasses, threading through the eyes of the mouse, and the buds of the stars, calling with the sweet breath of the field. Now I'll add a bit. It takes a particular vision to be able to detect precisely where this that she just described ends and the cat begins. Shall I read it again? I think it's a magical poem in a way, because it's incredibly simple. It takes a particular vision to be able to detect precisely where the field grasses, brushed by blowing stars, and the odor of spring in the breath of sweet clover buds, and the star-mingled calls of toads in the threading grasses, and the paws of clover brushing through the field of stars, and star-shaped crickets in the ears of sweet grasses, and the tail of the night flickering through the calls of the clover, and the spring stars slinking past the eyes of midnight, and the hour of the field mouse pausing through the claws of the stars, and the brushing haunches of the weeds and starry grasses threading through the eyes of the mouse, and the buds of the stars calling with the sweet breath of the field. Where precisely this ends and the cat begins. It takes a particular vision to be able to detect precisely where the floor ends and your feet begin, where your breath ends and the dance of the leaves on the trees. Right? This is something. Right? Where are we? Where is the cat? What is the cat? What am I? Right? And the beautiful and the complexity of this poem is that the stars are kind of weaving through the clover, which is weaving through the mouse, which is weaving through the crickets, which is weaving through the stars, and the claws of the cat are the kind of environment. Where do you begin and the environment end off, and vice versa? It takes a peculiar kind of vision to be able to precisely discern where this takes place. Right? A peculiar kind of vision, this weird vision of ego, unique individual separateness. That's a peculiar kind of vision. That's Paddy Ann Rogers. That was the first poem. The second poem is a short segment of a poem which I had something to do with. Although I use the word I, let me speak on your behalf. Right? I am animate. I am an animal. I am born from life and living, and so, dear friend, are you. Everything we experience reverberates with these truths. It's primordial. I exist as a melodic continuity, musing music, acapelling the universe into being. Weavings of texture, rhythm and timbre, this kinetic and kinesthetic presencing, a multi-realmed, multi-dimensional dancings within dancings, dancing with dancings. This is taking place when we're doing absolutely nothing, when we're absolutely still. This dancing takes place when we're dancing. It takes place when we sit down and stop dancing. This dancing is primordial. Beginning with the fullness of what you are. Many people begin the path of Dharma with the bitsiness that they are, and they hope that by practicing they'll come to a fullness. But here we're suggesting that we begin with the fullness, and maybe we'll find our way through to a mystery of bitsiness. Beginning with the fullness of what you are, not what you name, describe or explain, but what you actually are. Finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of ever-fresh now, discovering beingness anew. Feeling the recurring waves, rhythmically similar, yet individually unique, pushing and pulling, filling and emptying, covering and exposing, tumbling and churning, frothing and fizzling, initiating and responding, revealing and hiding, ungraspable revelation. This domain of gestation, a birthing room of values. What on earth is happening? What in mind is happening? Dancings of moon and sand and flowing liquids, the seamless meeting of wet and dry, emotions and detached observation, inner and outer, self and other, knowing, known and knower. And here, dancing this indescribable omni-process, involving everything and everyone, we discover our breathing. These flowings of flowings within flowings, branchings and giftings, this tree of life and living, connections of all of us, stardust to stardust, waves of probability proliferating, this breathing of everyone. I was reflecting how there's a curious symmetry in our lives. That we all of us began with this. We began, we were just kind of rhythmic pulsings of movings, of dancings, of interactings and so on. We weren't a person who was growing up to become a somebody, right? It's hard to conceive of that in a one-day-old being. It's just there's just this extraordinary engagement, right? And there's you can imagine like the trust that must be there. Whose trust? I don't know who's trusting it. The organism trust. I mean, why would we even step out of the womb or emerge or agree to come out if there wasn't almost like a trust that there would be something out there to cradle us? Right? Why would we bother even developing eyes in a dark space? If it wasn't for almost like some kind of, it's a strange way of speaking. I'm speaking poetically. I'm not trying to speak in any kind of scientific way, right? We're going to there will be a world of light waiting for our eyes. What a strange thing this, right? And you kind of watch, like the way the baby completely surrenders into the arms of who's holding her or him. Right? It's like there's an extraordinary relaxation. Whoops! Oh, better change the diaper. The relaxation is just inside and outside. It's like the whole organism is just pulsing and moving, shifting and changing. There's incredible trust. Right? And we exist in this kind of dance of inner and outer and self and other and and the whole world, this whole, where does the cat begin and the field and the stars end off? This is not poetry, this is not philosophy, this is a description of where we all began. And then you see the curious symmetry is this, in the process of this we gradually, with the help, the huge dedicated help of all the people around us, developed a sense of being someone with capacities and attributes and so on. And we struggled and we developed a sense of individual selfness, right? And we got labels and uniforms and special hats and little letters after your name and, a proliferation of letters after your name the further you go. And you become a somebody, and the somebody has all kinds of oughts and expectations, and eventually you think you're kind of afraid of letting go. The somebody doesn't trust the universe at all, because the universe is a whole bunch of other somebodies doing their thing. And how can you trust them that they're going to be there for you? And it's very rare, the adult that can relax the way a day or 2 day old baby can relax. Right? Can you see this? I mean, I don't think I'm talking about anything outrageous. It's just there. It's patently obvious if you look. Right? And then here's the symmetry. we start getting old, right? And, like when we were young and we're coming into our adult strength of me and I can do and so on, that's hugely tied up with memory and language. Okay? We can speak and we can describe and we can speculate and we can rattle on with each other. And then we might get a stage where all of a sudden you got, I forgot what I was going to say. I remember we were in Toronto and we were with, what was the name? I can't remember them. It's great on Zoom. They have names underneath all the kind of faces and so on, so I can look and I go, oh, is that David French? Oh, how strange. Right? And it's not uncommon that when we get old, we start to lose a lot of the skills that we needed to be a superego. Right? And you discover, the New Zealand Transport calls you in. You get your 75th birthday present, which is you now have to get another license. Then they check your eyes and so on, and they say, and if anyone has any suspicions about you being able to drive, you've got to come and have another test. Somewhere along the line, they say, you can't drive. Thank God. For the benefit of all the others, right? But our independence starts to kind of slide away from us, both being, just as in a sense, a lot of our sense of independence was given to us. I was treated as if I was a boy. It's one of the very first things they did to me was they looked in my private parts. It was like extraordinary. And then they said, it's a boy. And then after that, it was no longer an it is a boy. He is, right? He's an Eric. Right? What a weird sound that is. That kind of haven't sort of related to being an Eric for such a long time. Right? It's like, we kind of, our identity doesn't just emerge from our own living, it kind of is impinged upon us by the people around us, right? And so, when we get old, not only is our kind of dissipation of our individuality something that just happens within us, but it's impinged upon us. They take our driver's license away from us. Whatever, right? And there's this kind of we call it a failure. You're losing your losing your memory and you're losing this. But what if what was actually happening was you finally maturing into expanding into the wider mystery of the planet, because it's all you can do. And all you can do is you have to rely on others more and more and more as you get older and older. You have to rely on others, just like the baby, right? You're trusting, you're in this dance, and how you are today depends on the weather and what's going on in your colon, and you know what I mean? Like inner and outer and the whole thing. Much more so than in the middle of your life, where you just kind of expect that the body and all your expectations play out and you can get on with things. Right? There's a kind of, we begin as a curious symmetry. In a way, we begin in beautiful relationship with a living world, and actually, if we allow ourselves, we could end in a beautiful relationship with the living world. It's a beautiful symmetry. We're expanding into the wider life of the planet, right? And we don't lose everything. There's still a sense of being. You've got all those skills and so on that have been accumulated through the life, right, to come to this. And when you look at the problem, when I look at the kind of horrific, largely human-generated problems that so many beings are living with in the world today, war, oppression, illness, homelessness, right? Hunger, right? Madness. It's shocking, right? And you go, well, what do I do to fix this? What do I do to fix this? Surely you've had these thoughts from time to time, right? And not necessarily so, but you may have from some time to time had the thought that you don't have a clue how to fix this. It just seems so big and so complex and so vast. Right? And yet there is something there in your being which might kind of reverberate to you that in order to tackle such a monumentally immense problem of living, ancient Buddhists called this samsara, that was a very simple name, covered it all, right? That it would be valuable to bring all of your best qualities to bear in your living, right? You begin to see that the only place where I can actually do anything is in the living that I am, in this primordial living, this primordial space. And so, somewhere in the course of our life, we might actually develop a passion to understand more fully what's going on. This is not a passion that is kind of really acknowledged in many of the cultures of the world today. Right? This is called something strange. It's got a little bit extra you do after you've done the real business of your life, which is becoming rich and famous and earning a living and succeeding. Right? That you might be curious. We call it, oh, you're kind of spiritual, or you're kind of philosophical, or something like that, or academic. It's kind of rather intellectual or conceptual. Right? And yet, here we are. And so we've been looking at this text as a kind of a thread to keep us on track with our primordial Dharma. Right? Weaving through. Right? And last time we met, I spoke quite a lot about stages of development, if you like, stages of the path, and how kind of the initial stages, right, both in an individual life, but also in terms of our, odyssey. It's like a journey. It's a transformative journey, an adventure. Sounds a bit glib and sweet to call it that. It's much bigger than that, right? Of kind of growing into our life and our living. Right? And the first stage is the stage or the path, if you like, of accumulation, and we're accumulating talents and kind of abilities. And you can see this in a baby. Baby's developing talents. It's not meditation, right? You're kind of learning how to walk and how to talk and how to eat and not choke on your food, and how to reach and grab things gently enough not to hurt it, but hard enough, firmly enough not to drop it. These are like extraordinary skills that we learn usually by trial and error. Right? Lots of trial and error in the kind of, and actually we can hardly say, oh, I have accumulated the skill of being able to walk. Right? But there's nothing like, actually it just popped into my mind, I've had a number of surgeries in recent time, and I can remember coming back from the hospital after the first big surgery, and we managed to get into the house. I know how to walk into the house, right? And then we sort of managed to stagger around to the big bedroom and got me turned around, and I I sat down on the bed. Wow. But that was a big deal. And then I suddenly realized I didn't have a clue how I was going to lie down without causing a lot of pain, right? And yet I had to get laid down. Right? Like, it's only when you lose some of these simple, I mean, it doesn't occur to you that there's a skill in lying down in bed. But you can't take a 1-year-old baby and say, okay, do the lie down in bed skill. Imagine like how long it takes, like the baby sucks its thumb, you know? Like it took a long time. In the womb it went like this. Right? It had already done a lot of practice of thumb sucking before you even got born. So when you came out, you were already good at it. You know, we don't think of these as skills. We think of, you know, being able to skillfully know how to maneuver a mortgage and you know, make investments and plan for your old age, and those are skills, and play the piano. And we don't consider like being able to take a mouthful of food and then continue your sentence without choking. Until you begin to lose those skills a little bit. You go, oh my gosh, just like this, right? So what I'm talking about is life, this is not a spiritual thing. The first stage is the path of accumulation. This is life. And actually we accumulate new skills and capacities for as long as we're alive. This is a process that goes on forever, right? But in the early stages, we get very excited about developing skills. We put a lot of energy into this. Right? It's like, look what I've learned, and we share it with other people, and we go to school, and we do all this stuff. Gradually, we've got sufficient number of skills, of body and physiological skills, emotional skills, conceptual skills, language skills, and so on, to be able to kind of satisfactorily maneuver ourselves through the world as long as the world cooperates and stays the way we've got used to, right? And at that point, the kind of the passion to accumulate more skills begins to get overlaid by a new thing that's coming up, which is to integrate the skills that we've got. It's the path of integration, right? We're kind of learning to integrate all these skills. So when we're talking about skills in remembering our primordial Dharma-ness, right? Remembering our true nature. There's skills involved in that, right? To develop this. And the first part of the sadhana is touching on some of these skills. And I'm going to just briefly kind of read through some of the text, right? Just to kind of, as a reminder, if you like, right? To cultivate this sadhana of naturalness. Actually says the sadhana of Samantabhadra, but we might not get to any Samantabhadra-ish thing. We'll just call it the sadhana of naturalness. Right? Arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. Right? This is a skill, to be able to arrange yourself in a strength-giving posture, physically, emotionally, mentally. Forte, strong, comfortable, right? That when you're comfortable, that's when you feel strong, right? When you feel kind of weak and fragile and so on, that's not strong, right? I'm not talking about bravado and muscle and pushiness and that kind of strong, but there's a sense of, it can be like a quiet strength that's there. Along with that strength is like a confidence, right? It doesn't say these things. It just says arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. But actually, there's a lot in this. And in order to, like, that's, you know, when the baby, you imagine saying to the blessed child, right, in the arms, right? You say to the child, Now arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. Right? It's amazing. They're comfortable. They seem to be in a comfortable posture in all sorts of postures. You think, God, how can they just relax? I see the cat. The cat finds some postures like head's way down and kind of upside down and turned around and lying on the driveway, like all kinds of strange kind of comfortable postures, right? But an adult, we've lost that. We don't know how to find comfort in almost any situation. We're relearning something here. I know people want to get onto it, but how many hours a day do I need to practice this? Or do I sit like this on my meditation cushion? No, just arrange yourself. What's myself? Am I my feelings? Am I my memories? It says arrange myself. Myself seems to be part of all these things. So arrange myself in a strength-giving posture, gesture, attitude, stance of beingness. This is the first skill. Yes.
Thank you. So to refer to you describing how you got to the bed and then you couldn't for the life of you figure out how to lie down and to avoid pain.
Without pain, yeah.
So is it possible for a person, could you have, I don't mean to be personal, but that circumstance, would it be possible to arrange yourself in a comfortable position of naturalness in that circumstance of trying to avoid pain and not being able to lie down?
At that extreme moment, the answer can only be personal, and the answer was no.
So there's ebbs and flows, and life presents stuff.
Yeah, you're touching on something which I don't know you're intending to touch on, but it's really important, because there's some implicit in your question. It's as if maybe there would be some incredible state of enlightenment, in which you would be absolutely kind of everything's perfection from then on. And I think that is a hopeful fantasy. It's a beautiful fantasy, but no one has the direct experience of it taking place, and yet we still hold on to this hopeful fantasy. What if this instruction, it says preparation, but the interesting thing is that the how can I put it? It's not really preparation. It's not like we think of preparation. Okay, I've done the preparation. Now I get on with the real stuff. It's more like this is the initial happening, and it goes on forever. And it's like we're constantly arranging ourselves. It's a skill. It doesn't say maintain a comfortable posture. It says arrange yourself. So I tried to arrange. I was trying. I said, Mary, do this, and then she tried to help, but she didn't quite know what, and I lost my temper actually. I was so stressed, right? And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how I could get her to lift my leg or swing me around, and finally we just ow, and bang, I was on the bed. And then I lost the plot, right? This is not a training for you to be doing, when all hell's breaking loose. This is a training to be doing when we can do the training, and we get better at it. And so the amount of time that we spend, at the beginning, maybe we could learn to be easeful with nice things. Gradually, we learn to be easeful with more challenging things. And that particular incident was extremely challenging, right? And afterwards I reflected and thought, well, actually, yeah, that was that. Then I felt regret that I yelled at Mary. And then I felt kind of, all sorts of stuff. And guess what? I learned. There was learning. Right? There's no kind of right way. We're not aiming for a goal of being able to be comfortable posture in whatever you're doing. That's not the goal. We are inviting ourselves to engage in this process. Because actually, you're nothing but a process. Maybe I haven't answered what you were saying, and in which case you could adjust it now. But I did want to draw a point to that, because even if it wasn't behind what you were saying, it definitely is in many people's minds.
It is important. You said that's important, and it is important. I know it's not a goal. I've been around. Things are falling apart in some places. I guess it's a process of being open and learning and having this process sort of percolating in the background somewhere, even if it feels like, and you have to make amends because you've completely stuffed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that...
I mean, I'm not saying you, I mean, I have completely stuffed up and I have to make amends.
Yeah.
And this comes and goes and comes and goes.
Yeah. And you might appreciate some supports in doing this. Right? And this is like, I increasingly feel this is an important point. People look at these meditations and they think of them as being almost descriptions of shoulds, like very high spiritual transcendent shoulds, that we're going to be here. And I would like to suggest that that's not really in the end. It might be useful for a while, it might take you all sorts of good places, but in the end it's not going to work, because you won't be able to should it. You'll get to a should, you can't should. And so rather than thinking of these as any kind of suggestion of a kind of ideal that we are falling short of or we need to attain or whatever, think of these are as supports, right? That we can kind of have something concrete to kind of holds our hand, we hold its hand, whilst we learn from this direct experience of stuffing up. Okay? Just a support, right? Arrange yourself in a comfortable posture. Then, right? But don't wait until then. Don't wait until your comfortable posture is perfect. Because you never... It's a juicy sadhana. There's lots of good stuff on the next page. You can spend your whole... Oh, I haven't got the comfortable posture yet. Right? Then, making friends with your breathing. Yeah? When actually... Was it that one? It was actually, that's the same operation. It was the prostatectomy. And they asked me before I went into... They asked me if I had any kind of spiritual needs that, in the form you fill out and everything. And I don't usually say anything like this, but I just decided to say, I'm a Buddhist, right? And I don't know why I put that down, but I did. Anyway, I was in the recovery room, and you're recovering from the, you're in deep anesthetic and you're unconscious, and people react differently to, total full anesthetic. And I came out of it that time, I was kind of gasping and fighting. Interesting, right? I came out and I was kind of, it's like fighting my way up out of this kind of deep pool or something, And the nurse was there. And she said to me, "You're supposed to be a Buddhist. Breathe." It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic, right? Here am I. We're talking about, I mean, I've been teaching Dharma all over the world in retreat centers and so on for decades, right? And here's this. Who does she know? Right? And she said, "None of you would say, Tarshan, you're supposed to be a Buddhist. Breathe." But fortunately, I'd kind of gone and written this down on the form, and she'd read it. "You're supposed to be a Buddhist. Breathe." And the first thing that came was a smile. It's just the irony of the whole thing. I grinned, I breathed, and I said, "Thank you." Right? It was a support. Breathing meditation can be a support. I had brought breathing meditation to a point where it was a support. Yes, at that moment, it was beautiful that she reminded me. Right? There are times, when it's not my fault, it was the drugs. Right? And we could do a whole psychoanalysis on it and so on, and this is not the other. Never minding that. It's just the fact. It happened. And it was useful to have the support. And if she'd said breathe, but I hadn't had years and years of making friends with my breathing, and plus the irony of having this person tell me was best medicine, was humor. The whole thing was kind of quirky. Then making friends with your breathing, invite your entire body, brain, mind community. Your entire body, brain, mind community. And, what is your body? Right? All of your body. All of it. Not just the parts that you kind of lavish attention on. It's nothing like having an illness to suddenly have your attention pulled to parts you haven't given any attention to. Right? And pains you never imagined, and kind of dysfunctions you never imagined. What is your physiology? Do you feel at home in your physiology? And so this is actually a huge thing, right? Making friends with your breathing, invite your entire body, brain, mind community to settle into a place of pristine stillness and vibrantly awake presence. There. Now, for some beings, we've already got 3 or 4 supports in that first paragraph, which could last us for quite a long time. And you don't practice it until you've got it together, and then you move to the next section. Right? You practice it until practice and non-practice and existence stops. Right? Oh, I made friends with my body, body, brain, mind community, and now I don't need to make friends with it anymore. I did that, 10 years ago. It's not good enough. I need to be in a state of friendliness with it now. Could I be friendly with cancer? I learned. At the beginning, I must admit, I kind of thought I could, but there was parts of me that was, I don't like it. I don't like this stuff. I want to get rid of it. Gradually, and then I can get back to my life. And then I go, Tarshan, what are you talking about? There's no going back to the primordial living that you are. This is your life. This is your living. It's called living with cancer. Oh, I don't do the things I used to do. Oh, yeah, but I do the things I do now. It's almost like we're learning to embrace life with a positive quality of it's in the doing that I'm doing, not the not doing that I'm not focused on what I'm not doing, I'm focused on what I'm doing. Okay? Smiling, breathing, present with an expanding appreciation for the spacious, open, interbeing, inter-knowing nature of all experience. Feel the deep stirring of bodhicitta, a naturally evolving disposition for cultivating both in ourselves and others the magnificent human potential for panoramic, multi-realmed awareness and ceaseless compassion and love. Okay. Maybe the first one was sort of more focused on ourself, but then gradually, as a baby, you begin to realize that there are actually living others in your world. You discover a mother and a brother and a sister and a cat, right? That maybe all the other things in the world are objects, but these start to become living beings, and you begin to realize that your body, brain, mind community, right, is interbeing with them. Now, for many people, to explore our body, brain, mind community, to do it in a kind of deep sense, we can do it kind of intellectually. We could study physiology and medicine and all these kinds of things. We could do it emotionally, right? And kind of really like the feeling of how it's all working, right? We could do it in tactile kinesthetically. We could study the physiology of what's going on. We could study the concepts of what's going on. We could realize all of this working together, right? In a kind of, the certain supports, we could have, give attention to what's going on. What's going on? Body, brain, mind, community. What's going on? EMAP, embodied, right? Mindfulness, awareness, in placeness, or in location, right? It's like this is like recognizing, here, what's going on here? Smiling, breathing, present, appreciate. These are all supports, right, that we might use. And to use those supports until they become so deeply ingrained in your being that they frequently come up in more and more, they can come up in more and more challenging situations, and when you do forget them, you remember them more and more rapidly, right? At the beginning, you've got to go off and do another course, or you've got to go off and read another book, or you've got to go and talk to somebody, but eventually you actually remember on your own, just walking along. Okay? Imagine this, right? Right? And so we're beginning to now cultivate not only, right, a kind of deep appreciation of our interbeingness, inter-knowing nature. We start to, in a sense, be concerned with the well-being of all the others, the bodhicitta, right, in the process, because we realize that it's really difficult to be happy when you're surrounded by extraordinarily miserable people. It's fairly difficult to be happy when you're sitting side by side when somebody else is suffering, right? Oh, there's something wrong with you, because you're clinging or something. You're feeling miserable because somebody else is suffering. Well, I think it means you're alive. Good, right? It's not quite so easy, but it's absolutely essential that we work on this. You can call it, if you like, meditation. You can call it, if you like, practicing Dharma. Okay? The stance that I've tended to take over many, many years is to, in a sense, sketch out a smorgasbord of supports and techniques and methods and so on, with the idea that people will choose something. Right? And it's up to you, because I can't make anyone question and make anyone inquire, even if I wanted to. Right? But sometimes I wonder if it kind of hints at something I don't intend to hint at. And that is that it doesn't really matter whether you meditate or not, or it doesn't really matter if you practice or so on. It's like, if you don't practice walking, you won't learn to walk. And if you don't practice being an alive, compassionate, clear-seeing human being, engaging with a constantly changing world which is beyond your ability to control, if you don't practice that, you won't become good at it. And you just have to work on these supports. You have to. They don't sit there as supports. They're supports because we habituate to them. And when she says, "You're supposed to be a Buddhist," breathe. Something inside smiles, and you take a breath, and you body, bring back in my body, right? It doesn't take very much to be reminded, right? Whereas maybe at the beginning it takes lots to be reminded, right? And then gradually we find ourselves within this primordial space of contemplation, contemplating our deepest sense of groundedness, of connectedness, of belonging, increasing sense of belonging and connectedness. In Buddhism we call this taking refuge. Okay? And there's words here that we can use, but we're constantly taking refuge. I take refuge in love and clear seeing. Where do you take refuge? What do you reach for refuge when the going gets tough? Right? Love and clear seeing. We live courageously in this world of birthing, dying. Things are dying away. We're not experiencing a lot of loss now we're getting older. We're just experiencing a lot of loss. And actually it's been going on all the time. We just didn't notice it or pay any attention to it, right? Because we were much more cruisy in living in this conceptual ego universe instead of the here and now, breathe in, breathe out, swallow, right? The absolute, straightforward, tactile, kinesthetic reality of living. Because it tends to work automatically by itself through the middle years for a period of time, not too bad. But then gradually it starts to kind of not work quite so well. And we're back to this. Where do I find my sense of belonging? Right? And it may be, I'm sort of triggering and from a theme from what you raised, but it may be that in the process of contemplating, more and more frequenting a sense of, I don't know if those of you who are on the screens can hear the cicadas that are outside the house. And the clicking. Right? But we're surrounded, and there's occasional bird sound and so on, and you feel the earth and the moisture in the earth as you walk on the ground, and the sun on your skin, and you might actually have a feeling of like I'm in this mother, this earth, this beingness, this eternal gestation, right? As we grow ourselves into God knows what, right? Where this is, I take refuge in this. And there's a sense, occasionally we have sense of like, and there's other days it doesn't feel like that. It's like we're walking on the earth, we're pushing through the things, we're trying to get somewhere, right? But increasingly we might be able to find refuge in like the sense of this deep sense of nourishing, belonging, of, it's like, I feel like I belong. It's not like that. It's like, can you sit on the chair in a way that demonstrates that you actually have a deep trust that you're belonging in this chair, and that the chair, you are absolutely relying on the chair not to disintegrate. And if you ever sat down on a chair which you know has got a wobbly leg, And it doesn't quite work, and you don't sit on it in the same way. I'm trying to point out that when I pump myself down, my body, there's a kind of a visceral sense of trust, of like support. I take refuge in the true state of affairs, spontaneously present, timeless awareness, radically inclusive love unfolding in all its fullness, the vast, ungraspable suchness that is this living universe world. This is ever-fresh Buddha in action, budding Buddha-ha in action. It's all through me and around me, and it's available instantly. It doesn't matter where you are, it's available. Some beings can find it in prison. Right? Many beings can't. Right? Many of us are not in prison, and yet we feel more imprisoned by our obligations and life circumstances than some people who are in an actual prison. Kind of prison is a kind of a state of mind. Right? Can we find refuge wherever I am? I recognize, celebrate, and cultivate the paths, teachings, and encouragements that support our realizing the true state of affairs. This dancing body-brain-mind community, interbeing, interknowing with all other body-brain-mind communities, this living biosphere in process, right? This natural state of affairs. Daily I will bring forth generosity, wholesome relating, patience, skilled use of energy, continuity of caring and inquiry, and profound understanding. This is Dharma put to good use. Right? And the more we put it to use, the more it becomes not something we practice, but it just becomes sort of naturally part and parcel of what we do. Right? We developed a lot of what we are and what we do, right, without any intention when we were young. Some of it came from needs that were naturally there within the organism, but it was needs within the organism in relationship with the demands and needs of all the beings in the society and the environment around us, right? So it was kind of our sense of this is kind of put upon us automatically. But as we get older, we can possibly begin to make choices and actually encourage. Instead of the habituation, just it happened to us, we could choose to kind of habituate ourselves in this way. Okay? To make friends with our breathing. To do the best I can about a comfortable posture, however I am. I did do that in there. I forgot, I didn't remember these words or anything. But I was doing the best I could. I was doing it. I was trying to find out. I was doing the best I could. The best I could looked pretty awful, but nevertheless, we got onto the bed. It was a relief. Then the next problem was how to get up. Right? And it's almost like what happened was I'd taken for granted that I knew my body. I had to relearn my body like I was a baby. There was parts of me that weren't there anymore. There were parts that didn't function the way they used to. And so now, in an adult mind, with an adult expectation, I had to become an infant again and learn how to pee and how to poo and how to not pee and poo and how to get up and move and roll over. And I mean, simple things right from the very beginning. It's amazing. You can learn it fairly fast because you had some practice. But we celebrate, we have Dharma put to good use, right? We've got to celebrate these supports. Right? Releasing into a profound sense of being, this continuously gestating mystery of communion. I am home. Right? And now I'm gonna play the other hand. And you're supposed to be a midwife. You're supposed to know things about gestation. Right? Right? Gestate. Tarshan, you're supposed to be a Buddhist. Breathe. You're supposed to be a midwife. Gestate. and there's all kinds of knowledges you actually know, huge knowledges, both from your own experience of mothering and your experience in supporting mothers and mothers-to-be and so forth. Right? There's a lot of knowledge of what gestating and what birthing is, you know, and you chose to be a domiciliary midwife, not a factory employee, and so, you know, your answer wasn't, oh well, it's 2 o'clock, time for your birth, I got golfing at 4. That wasn't something that, I don't think it came up for you. Maybe I'm projecting. I apologize then. Right? Right? But you saw there was a naturalness to this. You saw that there a huge amount of what you were. You didn't say you're a Buddhist. Breathe. You didn't say anything like that. You just said breathe. You know, don't push. Breathe. Right? There's all kinds of, it's not simple what I'm saying, because I'm saying little simple words, but I'm not referring to some specific little tiny detail. There's a whole thing about trust, about flow, about naturalness, and we don't really know where it's going to go, and yet your skill in midwifery is to have the courage, the skill, the background to be able to step into a situation which is life or death, and you don't actually know for sure how it's going to work out, and yet there's a willingness to bring your best to it. This is exactly what this is. You know this in your bones, right? It's like releasing into this profound sense of being this continuously gestating mystery of communion. You know, this interbeing, right? You could take this as this metaphor which you know in your bones and extend it to everything. That my whole life is a kind of gestating of newness, this constantly birthing newness. This is the experiencing of true Sangha, community, the fruition of all refuge practice, home. Okay? And then we go on and we touch the Bodhisattva vow, we touch meditations on loving kindness. These are all of these are touching on a whole array of skills that we can accumulate and make our own and get better at, that we can bring to bear on our living. Then we finally come to where the second part of the path starts, integration. And we're not so much thinking about integrating new skills, and there's lots of supports. I'd like to just point out that when you're exploring, awareness, interbeingness, interknowingness, body, brain, mind, community, for example, the natural way to meditate, the foundations of mindfulness, walking in wisdom, this nectar of naturalness. I've written copious books with tons of different exercises and so on, which all support this. Okay? But we have to somehow feel that this is something that I need to do. It doesn't arise out of someone saying you need to do this, you should meditate. Nobody meditates that way. Good meditation emerges out of curiosity and wonderment and a kind of deep desire to... Meditation is just exploring the universe in a very subtle way, which has space for everything, rather than exploring the universe in a less subtle way, which is all outer or all inner, or and so on and like that. Meditation is just like being balanced and middled in the midst of these explorations. And so we come to what is now called in the text the essential practices. And this is actually what the class was supposed to be all about, except it's now nearly lunchtime. Right? Okay? But it's not, I don't know how to put this. It's like when you get to this section, it's ideally, in an ideal world, the other sections are all going. If they're not all going, then what you do is you treat this section as yet more stuff more skill to accumulate. Whereas imagine for a moment, this is kind of a theoretical thing, that you're in a really good place, you're in a good space, and everything's kind of flowing well. And then you come to this essential instruction, in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. Okay? And this is hugely profound, in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. First of all, at a simple level, it's saying that this is something you do when you're driving the car, when you're cooking a meal, when you're going to sleep, when you're waking up, when you're in hospital, when you're coming home from the hospital, when you're helping someone, when you're worried about your own private little thing. It doesn't matter, in the flow of whatever you're doing, right? In the natural flow. In the natural flowing of whatever is occurring for you. Right? Day and night. Inner and outer, inspired and depressed. In the flowing of what's for you. But it's also saying, in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. And you see, what is occurring is more than you. Because in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring is Mary trying to deal with her cough, right? And the sound of the wind in the trees. And it raises a question here. This is not something that you should do. You go to the question, what on earth is occurring? Before you get round to kind of doing this as an instruction, in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring, ever, primordial, it's ever occurring. It's this living that I am, in the natural flowing of this living, right? Cultivate a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease, suffused with serene alertness and vivid discernment. This is essential practice. Okay? How do I cultivate this? This is for you to find out. Right? Maybe you have to go and buy another tool. Down at the gardening shop, Palmer's got a special on these things, hoes or rakes or secateurs or maybe a great big 4-stroke engine, whatever, right? Different tools, and maybe send us off to accumulate more things, right? In the natural flowing of whatever is occurring, this suchness, this interbeing, interknowing home, this mystery of life unfolding. I'm cultivating a continuity. The word continuity, by the way, is a little hidden little thing here for the Buddhists. This is a tantric teaching. Right? The word tantra can be translated in many ways. One of the word translations of tantra is continuity. We could have said cultivate a tantra of profoundly nourishing ease. It also means a weaving. Tantu is like a string. It's like a weaving. The study of tantra is the study of the continuous weaving, the web working of life unfolding. This is the real study of tantra, not specialized esoteric exercises. They hijack the word. Tantra is actually a very kind of broad word, right? And so there's a continuity, cultivate a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease. That's going to take me a while, right? That's what I find is like, really easy. Now I'm really easy. But what was it in between? and you kind of realize continuously that there's not much continuum, right? Where is the continuum in your living? Right? Can you? This is an aspiration, if you like, but it's something we can encourage. It's something we can definitely discourage. We might not know how to encourage it, but at least at the beginning we can not discourage it. Right? How can I bring this forth? I think we can sit and have conferences on how to solve these problems and social ills and so on and so forth, and we can pass laws and do this and do that and the other. But all of that is kind of missing the point, because it's not addressing the aliveness that we are. Maybe if we turn it around backwards and we had a huge New Zealand-wide conference to kind of solve all the social problems, and everyone comes in a state of a continuity of easefulness and relaxation in their home, in the inter-knowing nature of everything, right? And they're flowing with loving kindness and compassion and aspiration to meet all beings with kindness and interest and so on and so forth, and then have a conference. It would, I suspect, be a really different conference. Right? And I wonder, if we don't think that maybe by having techniques and laws and methods and so forth, we would actually kind of somehow get to this mystery of fulfilled living. Or maybe the mystery of fulfilled living comes first. And you go, well, I can't wait for that. This I have to do. And yes, I'm still got a job. And yes, I'm still raising a family. And yes, I'm still having these obligations. And I'm learning to do it in the midst of this. Right? This is a maturing of spiritual practice. Right? So we don't even call it spiritual practice anymore because it's life. Right? Whether sitting, standing, lying down, or walking, like in the midst of whatever kind of activity we're in, it's not just sitting. Allow everything to rest. Allow everything to abide in its own place. And that's a kind of a mystery for some beings. So I added a phrase, right? So that kind of maybe, what do we mean by its own place? Right? The unique, ever-fresh fullness and vastness of being, becoming, that it is. Allow everything to rest in that. Right? What is its own place? It's very difficult. Lost the page now. It's very difficult to discern at midnight, right? Where the being, the field, and the starlight, and the mouse, and the clover end off, and the cat begins. And it's very difficult, right, in the midst of sensitive, open inquiry, to know exactly where you begin and end off, and the rest of the universe begins, is the age, and the universe ends off and you begin. Right? So what is your own place? And in a sense, the own place, right, is suchness. We have this word that we could call suchness because it's just nice to have a word for it. It doesn't really tell you anything more, right? But it is suchness. It's like such as it is, right? Whether walking, sitting, standing, allow everything to rest, to abide. And this is an extraordinary exploration and training. Like, can I relate to you in a way which is, by relating to you, honors that you're living, you are abiding in your own place. And I'm willing to engage with that, rather than trying to engage with the person who I would like you to be, or wish you would be, or these kinds of things? Can I actually meet the world in all its fullness? And that includes not knowing. It includes, threads of fear. It includes threads of genius and inspiration and talent. It includes, kind of practical skills, and it includes big holes in their fabric that never got developed because of situations and circumstances never allowed it. Right? This would be an extraordinary thing, right, to live in this way. Yeah.
It's quite funny listening to you, Tarshan, because the perspective from where you're coming from and how this is being heard, possibly in my ears, it's quite a different place, I think, but not. And somewhere amongst all of what you're saying, there's this proposition that what we think is going on perhaps isn't really going on, but it is.
Well, so I could maybe just add, what you think is going on isn't what's going on, is not what all of what's going on.
Yeah, partial view perhaps.
That's it.
Yeah. And I just had to listen to your talk last week, or just over the last week, and that's the thing that I have the biggest question around, really, when you're talking about integration, accumulation. We've gathered all these skills, and then effectively there's this, you kind of summed it up in one line where you said, how do we hold the question fruitfully and vibrantly in our being? Between discerning what's a concept, because you were talking about selective attentiveness, suchness, such as it is, and appreciating the subtle inner dynamics which someone can do if they're sitting or contemplating, to make a discernment, an insight into something that appears to be and something that is. And I guess that's I just kind of really wanted to make this statement, because not a statement, but just to say, because this would seem to be the better places to say it, is that there's just this habitual referencing to that ego structure that you were talking about, that just comes in somewhere and goes, this is what it is, or this is what you are, such that things are experienced in a particular way, either directly towards me or otherwise, and such that I suffer. And that's what feels the great proposition amongst all of what you're really saying through, to me anyway, through the series of talks that you've been giving over to bring us to this point, because I was like, well, cool, we'll get to this bit, but it's been amongst all of it anyway, because the early stages you talked about sensation, and you also, in the last talk, you used this phrase which I probably is the closest, which is the intimate hum. It's an intimate hum, and there's, maybe we should look at that rather than what I think is going on as a doorway to begin to practically investigate into some of the things that you're talking about. And so I really just, amongst all of that, just wanted to feed in another perspective to find where you're, amongst the mood, the sort of the theatre that you're sharing with us, something that feels tangible to me and meaningful. Because it's very different, but similar and within, and maybe more inclusive of my everyday life experience of going to A to B to C, doing this, that, the other, doing the work job thing, whatever, fulfilling a role. And in fact, we know this, much more of this, but to bring it into consciousness, I feel just it's important at some point just to express it in a particular way.
Well, you're that the effort to express your experience is a kind of an opportunity for you to, in a sense, what you're expressing is not your experience. You're expressing a hypothesis.
Yeah.
That's what you're expressing. And then this is a wonderful opportunity because the hypothesis is no longer coming from someone else, it's coming from within you. And then you can go, how can I check this out to see how robust and useful this hypothesis is? If it feels robust and useful, of course we're going to run with it. If it doesn't, we'll look for something else. You know, and that's part of the adult human being participating in their unfolding rather than it just happening. We make what are this going on? And immediately it comes up, some kind of hypothesis comes up of what's going on. Okay, sometimes the hypothesis is really wacky and it doesn't stand up very well. So then maybe that might lead the person who's of a certain temperament to try and find another hypothesis, one that kind of works. If you have a different temperament, though, it might just lead you to go, oh, stuff it, why would I bother asking this? Just eat, drink, and be merry and die. Or you don't say and die, but that's just the natural thing that after all your eating and drinking and being merry, you'll eventually get there. So trying to express this is it's not a matter of did you get it right. It's like, did that expression kind of lead you to greater kind of investigative kind of curiosity and interest and capacity for engagement. And the thing is that the reason why I've said that the essential practice is more starting to be the path of integration is that at this stage, you know, in the natural flowing of whatever's occurring, you go like, what is occurring? Okay. And you see like there's like awareness of my body. And you could spend, you want something tangible? Right? Become aware of the sensations in your feet. Do that for a week. Then extend it to your ankles. Right? Feel all the muscular contractions involved in lifting your arm and bringing a cup to your lips to drink. Right? Don't think about what you're going to drink. Just pay attention to the physicality of it. What I'm trying to point out is that there's an immense amount to be explored in tactile, kinesthetic, body awareness, you know, kind of personal, like body awareness work. And actually more than anyone can explore in a whole lifetime. There's some people who devote their entire life to this kind of Maxine Sheets Johnson, you know, put her whole life into dance and movement and studying movement and the physiology of movement and so on. She didn't finish. She died before she finished, or she might be still alive, but it's good. She's quite old now. But you see, for many people, if I say, well, do that, and then that's something tangible, and then we can get back to this big theater. And actually, you won't do it. You'll get bored with it. You know, you'll keep going, yeah, but what about that? So here we're developing our skills. The integration is like integrating skills in appreciating the body with skills in following and working with and being with and hosting and dealing with emotion, with feelings, with interpersonal things, with physical capacities. And like the natural flowing of whatever's occurring is not just an ankle, it's not just a foot, it's not just a feeling, it's a mixture of all of these things. Like the tactile kinesthetic sensation of our body is flowing into hopes and desires and anxieties and fears, which is like triggering thoughts and memories of past and possibilities of future. Like we're learning now, at this stage, we're learning to kind of dance the whole thing together with a very simple instruction in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. cultivate a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease suffused with serene alertness, vivid discernment. Right? That's actually step one. That's way back in the preparation, right? Making friends with your breathing, invite your entire body, brain, mind community to settle into a place of pristine stillness and vibrantly awake presence. You know, and you do it again and again. You describe it in different ways. You get all excited about it again. And gradually you begin, something in you starts to go, there's a kind of a wholeness about this. And increasingly you can have a sense of working with that wholeness. And the kind of paradigm that you have for the world, you know, like in a simple way, like of separation of me and the world, or self and other, or mind and matter, and all these kinds of things, it begins to soften in the sheer amount of experience that you're having of the edges flowing in and through each other, so that you're not quite sure where one begins and one ends off. And it comes a great breakthrough when you start to let go of the idea of the fact that you're not sure of where one begins and ends off is not a matter of ignorance or stupidity, but maybe it's a matter of clear seeing. That maybe there isn't an edge where one ends off and everything is flowing in and through, right? I mean, you know, who's growing in the womb? I mean, the physiology of the mother is under massive transformation, right? The physiology of the fetus in development is undergoing massive transformation. The transformations of the fetus are triggering transformations in the mother. The transformations in the mother are triggering, is it the fetus that's growing or the mother that's growing, right? Or is it both, or is it neither? Or, you know, you take away the green plants, neither of them do too well. You know, as our understanding of this meets and we come, something begins to shift and change. And it's subtle, it's over a long period, for most people it's over a long period of time. Again, a spiritual delusion is that somehow you practice, you have this fantastic peak experience, this transcendent experience, then after that everything's different. And although there may be some beings who claim such experiences, for the massive, you know, 99.9999999% of the human beings, it's not like that at all. We're in this for the long haul, right? Like you're when you got born, you had ahead of you the whole of your life, right? And yet the living is primordial. It's like, and the reason why I'm constantly sketching out this big theater is because it's a hope that I have. And the hope is that I see that generally speaking, for many, many people, one of the big separations is, oh, this is kind of spiritual stuff, or this is kind of Dharma stuff, and then that's life. And I'm trying to point out is that what we call spiritual stuff and Dharma stuff is just a natural unfolding of the life that's already happening. There's not categories that are taking place. And my sense is that, and for Dharma practitioners, for Buddhists, for meditators who don't see this, they're just constantly struggling with their practice forever. Because to them it's not a natural process, it's a contrived exercise in order to achieve some hoped-for goal, instead of just this, the really good spiritual or Dharma teaching is simply a kind of an attempt to remind each other of what we already are and what we already know. Right? And how do we develop the confidence? And my idea is that I want people to realize this, because then maybe they have the confidence to really throw themselves into the work. Because otherwise they don't really throw themselves into the work. They do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then they think about this and think about that, and they go to a talk and go to this. And it's like, when I say throw yourself into the work, it's like, I mean, you just get on with it exactly where you are, however you are. I don't mean you sign up to the retreat at Wangapeka. That's not throwing yourself into the work. If you throw yourself into the work, as you sign up or don't sign up, the work is happening in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. It's right here, and that transformation of going from, in a sense that is mysterious and so on, it is absolutely possible. It happens to people, many people.
But that's kind of what I feel like expressing. There's a greater possibility when I can somehow see it in this way, but also begin to understand a little bit more within my own experience or conceptualizing whatever's going on, that there is a necessary level of fixation in what's happening. Not that I'm looking to be there's just a confidence, just a greater confidence in seeing that something in my mind's eye just about concepts and the difference between what is a concept and perhaps what isn't, as a way of trusting that that's one thing, and even though they're interlinked, but just using that discernment between the two, I guess, is really what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you if you get really interested in this, you can make an experiment for yourself. You can have a concept, and then say how, for example, how does my body feel in the midst of this concept happening, right? And then change it to a different concept. Does your body change? It seems to be, you just said, yeah, you seem to be confident it'll change, right? So if the concept, right, is when it changes, the body changes, and when the body changes, the concept changes, why are you so insistent of knowing where one begins and the other one ends off?
I don't think it's the over-insistence. I just think there's a greater trust around that being a useful place to explore in myself, I think.
But are you exploring concept body, or are you exploring the idea that there is some place between the concept and the body, or a gap between the two? They're quite different. We have to finish the class, so I'm going to give you this pith instruction, right? Pith instruction is, take this sadhana and work with it. Every single day work with it. Take a little piece of it. Just read 2 words of it. Go away and make that a theme for the day. You'll forget it. I'm making it a theme for the day, and 15 minutes later it's gone, right? But then it pops out at lunch, right? You keep coming back to it, keep coming back to it, keep coming back to it, right? It doesn't have to be this, it could be all sorts of other things, but I do feel that we need to have a huge amount of reminders of raising the question, because we live in a society which is giving us a huge amount of reminders to not question, just to behave, just to succeed, just to...
That's clear.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to... You've got a battle going on, if you like, between a lot of suggestion. You can't live without community. So I have to kind of deal with the community. I need the community to accept me, right? So I need lots of kind of, like, ooh, you're this, you got to do this, you got to achieve, you got to, right? And so achieve spiritual things, achieve Dharma things, what have you, right? It's all the same stuff, right? Or maybe what if we need also daily reminders, daily kind of, we could, what we do is that this class, by the way, isn't going to end. I'm going to just talk non-stop until I drop dead. And you people are going to sit here and I'm going to just keep reminding you over and over and over. It's not going to work, right? That doesn't work. So you got to go away, right? And you go away and the funny thing is that you think, oh yeah, I know all that, and then you forget, right? And I don't know how to do it, but there's no way. If the person, Rinpoche was once asked by someone, came into asked him a question, and said, I'm a meditator at heart, sir, but I just have difficulty in getting myself to practice enough. And Rinpoche looked at this person and said, meditators are people who meditate. You're in total delusion that you're a meditator and don't meditate. Right? Right? Meditators are people who meditate. Dharma practitioners are people who practice holding, mothering, and supporting others whilst allowing and appreciating how they, moment by moment, are held, supported, and mothered by the rest of the universe in all its detail, in all its manifestation. This is primordial Dharma. It's what life works with, whether you call it Dharma or Buddhism or spiritual stuff or anything. Right? And somewhere along the line we get a sense of this. And yes, we've got wonderful conceptual minds and we can leap and this, and I love that. Obviously I do this, right? But there's also a lot of the grounding, a lot of time spent, right? When I first came to study with Rinpoche, and before that I'd spent maybe about 6 years trying to get on the Canadian national ski team, to go to the Olympics, snow skiing. I was an athlete. I was a kind of I was into that. And not only that, but we all did yoga because Jean-Claude Killy, who won triple gold at 1964 Olympics or something, he did yoga. So it wasn't spiritual at all, right? We all did hatha yoga and so on, because we were going to become greater skiers. And then I met Rinpoche. I decided I had to abandon all that and he made a curious comment to me, which I didn't understand for quite a few years. And he said, all your skiing is going to stand you in good stead for Dharma. And I was utterly baffled. I just had no idea what he was referring to, because to my perception, the skiing was just massively competitive. It was about trying to be the best and about winning and about fear of failure and so on and so forth. And I was just like... And I couldn't, what's that got to do with Dharma? How's that going to stand me in good stead of Dharma? And it was one of the reasons why I eventually dropped out, because I couldn't maintain that kind of competitive attitude, if you like. And then slowly over the years, like doing awareness of the body, I realized that I had a kind of a visceral awareness of my body, which a lot of people didn't have. I didn't have to work at it. I didn't have to meditate. I'd done it by skiing down hills at huge speeds and falling and crashing and getting up and falling and crashing, and you learn balance and agility and flexibility and so on. And it's just in there, right? And it wasn't like, I'm going to become aware of my body, right? Bodies are things that move, right? They're in there. And I put years into it. Nobody said, you have to practice skiing for 1 hour a day. Nobody said to me, you have to practice, school was pretty secondary. I kind of run out. I'd be skiing every night, because we had night skiing near where we lived, and I'd skip 2 days of school every week, Fridays and Mondays, because I was off at races, Yeah, I mean, like nobody could stop me doing this, and I dreamt about it, right? And I gossiped about it with my friends, and I thought about it, and when nobody was around, I'd sit on walls, like you'd sort of sit with your back against a wall to strengthen your thigh muscles, and you're working at it all day long. But this is a young person who's passionately working at something for whatever reasons, but in the process, part of that something is developing a tremendous awareness of body moving in space and dealing with feelings and emotions, and how your mind affects how you, because you need all that to be right there. And so that was when I started to see that actually my training in meditation had started way before I came to meet with Rinpoche, except it wasn't called meditation. Right? But the point that I'm making is put the hours in. And it's so, it's kind of, you don't have to think about it. It's just there. It's just like you make this your own, so to speak. And it's absolutely doable, and people transform. But it's like the Dharma works by working on the Dharma. It's kind of like this. Yeah. So this is very simple. Let's just finish off with this. In the natural flowing of whatever's occurring, cultivate a continuity of profoundly nourishing ease, suffused with serene alertness and vivid discernment. Where is the discernment? How is the discernment? What's ease? What's nourishing? What's profound? Whether walking, sitting, standing, lying down, going to work, coming home from work, going to a Dharma talk, right? Being in retreat, being at a festival, and whatever you're doing, right? Allow everything. And by the way, the word thing is another translation of Dharma. Right? Dharma can be translated as phenomena, thing, truth. Right? So it's saying let every Dharma, allow every Dharma to rest in its own place of being supported by Dharma and being the Dharma of support. To do this, with the person at the checkout counter, let this person rest in their own place. To do this when, Nathan, you should do this with Nathan. When we other ourselves, sort of turn around, look at ourselves, and then critique ourselves or encourage ourselves, or we've othered ourselves. Then how about allowing that other self to rest in its own place? And there's many moments in the day when we can do this easily. And there's many moments in the day where perhaps the needs of the moment are such that holding this thought isn't going to happen. It's just a distraction. It's gone, and then we're dealing with it. But we kind of pick this up again and again and again. Meet this stranger. Can I let them? After a while, we don't have to think, let them rest in their own place, because we're doing it. You know what I mean? It's just how you are. And it's not separate from love. And it's not separate from clear seeing. It's not separate from the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It's life. This is primordial Dharma. And it's a blessing to to be reminded of this. Right? And it's a blessing to remember this in our own beingness. It seems to me that Patty Ann Rogers, I suppose she could have had a life as a spiritual teacher, but she wasn't. She was a poet. And she spent her life just sharing a vision of how lives like flow through lives. The whole universe. By the power of these wholesome activities, may our lives be rich with awakening. Living thus, may we abandon all unwholesomeness. Through the endless mystery of birth, illness, old age, and death, may we help all beings to realize their true interbeing, interknowing nature. Sarvabhavan. Sarvabhavan. The next part of this section, in a sense, just loads a ton of further contemplations to be done in the natural flowing of whatever is occurring. So it fills it out, right? And it basically covers sort of all the schools of Buddhism. It's huge. The next Sunday that we gather will be our kind of last gathering in this series, and then we're off to Wangapeka, where we'll do real retreat work. So I would like to just announce now that and invite you to consider questions or themes that you would like to raise, either in the form of a question or in the form of observations and so on, that perhaps can be emerging out of your experiments with working with this in some way or another. And so when we gather for the next time, I'd like it very much to, I'm going to be asking for you for observations and so on, because to go on now and say, oh yeah, and then you add to it Sila, Samadhi and Prajna, and then you add to it the six parami, and then you add to it the union of samatha and vipassana, and then you add to that illusory body practice, and then you add to that, it's meaningless. It's just a big pile of lists that's not useful. Right? And so as a kind of a finishing off gathering in this series, I'd like to just make the opportunity to try and really bring it home and see how can we make this not a study of the Samantabhadra sadhana, but primordial Dharma in action. Yeah. Good. Thank you all. Right, wherever you are, however you are.
Thanks, God.
Good. Good.